Hello, class.
It's us.
Wait, no.
Your friends.
No. Just finished filming our project.
We went to the city.
Shelby, what did we do?
We explored access, and so we made a video, and you guys are gonna see. So take a look.
Hope you love it.
Yeah. Here we go.
Here you go.
So, we're on our way to the disabilities office. Let's see how accessible the disabilities office is.
Let's go.
First up,
We're approaching stairs.
so we see stairs, and I don't see a ramp. Shelby, do you see a ramp anywhere? No, yeah. So I looked around the corner. I didn't see a ramp over there either. So it looks like if you're trying to get to that level, you'd have to go all the way down to the football field and back. So
At least they have a door with a button.
at least they have a door with a button. Let's go see if that works, Shelby. Okay.
How am I supposed to get in?
Is it working? No. Shucks, Brooklyn College. So the Americans with Disabilities Act defines a disability as a physical or mental impairment that limits one or more of the following major life activities. Seeing, hearing, sleeping, learning, concentrating, or thinking is the last one. And according to the National Center for Education Statistics, about 3.5% or 700,000 college students across the country have some form of disability. So what does it mean for a campus to be accessible? Well, this can be broken up into 4 different parts: physical spaces, information technology, services, and instruction. Now, the problem with the Americans with Disabilities Act is it only requires that reasonable accommodations be made for students with disabilities. For instance, a college campus could only make certain buildings accessible and then tailor a student's schedule so that they only will be required to visit accessible buildings. But the problem that creates is that it's not equal treatment for all students. And a student with disabilities wouldn't be able to access all the resources that a student without disabilities would be able to access. For instance, a student with disabilities wouldn't be able to access all the same resources as an able-bodied student, such as counseling, sports, recreation on campus, club fairs or meetings, and more. Also, what's a big problem is people with invisible disabilities on campuses, which includes things like anxiety disorders, chronic fatigue disorders, and things that aren't necessarily diagnosable, and even if they are diagnosable, they often go undiagnosed. These types of disabilities are hard to exactly prove to teachers, instructors, or in places where they're needed to be addressed, and this makes it difficult for these students to receive the help that they need. Don't be in our video.
Or what?
Disability studies, bro. How do you feel about access on campus?
Do you think there's enough access for people with disabilities?
I think with the creation of the new access to right shelters, Bedford Ave and close to campus, I think that things have improved, but there could be more done for people with disabilities.
I think he knows what he's talking about.
That's
All right,
good.
man.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks,
man.
bro.
No problem.
Appreciate it.
Where are the accessorized shelters?
Too steep? Wheelchair accessible?
I'm gonna have to go back upstairs because there's no wheelchair.
But where's the elevator?
I'm going to discuss transportation and recreation based on what we've seen in our trip. So we took the MTA and it was interesting because only 112 out of 400 something train stations are actually accessible, and this just started recently when there was a movement to make high traffic subway stations to be accessible, and it's going to keep going and going until hopefully all the transportation, all the subway systems are accessible. It's pretty difficult for the MTA to do this since the subways were built a long time ago when disability wasn't really important, so it wasn't built for the future to try to make things accessible. Also, a lot of things that we noticed during the city, a lot of taxis were there, and it was interesting to ask how do people with disabilities who are at home, how do they haul taxis, especially if they're near a subway they don't have access to. And it's actually pretty accessible. The taxi service actually gives you like 5 different ways for you to access a taxi. You could use an app, you could text them, you could call them, you could get a website. There's a website you could book it on, and it's really, really good. And you could also, what's good for the taxis is the taxis would start getting paid once you call them in. So the taxis would get paid driving to you, but you wouldn't have to pay them driving to you. And that is covered by other taxis who don't have an accessible taxi, actually have to pay 15 cents extra as a tax per ride. And that 15 cents also funds the taxis who drive towards people who are disabled, and also funds the Access a Ride, which is another great program that's set up by the MTA. And it's basically people only pay $2.75, the regular MTA fare, and they could get picked up from their house and dropped off, and they don't have to pay anything extra, and they could book it. Everything is accessible. They have accessible trucks and buses, and it can take you anywhere you want.
So we're here at the notorious red stairs.
And there's no ramp.
There's no ramp.
here.
No, but like if people want to get to the top of the stairs, they can only get there by walking, and that in itself is discrimination. So we are against these stairs, right?
Well, we're sitting on them, but this is the last time we're going to be
This is
sitting.
the last time we're gonna be.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
boycotting. And we're in Times Square. We already had an interview with a very famous guy. You guys are going to find out in a couple minutes. Yeah, he was really famous. Really, really cool guy, you know? Inspiration. Nah, don't say inspiration, bro. We already talked about this. We're at the MoMA. Yeah, we finally made it.
Project about disability, and I was wondering if you have any exhibits that are accessible. So
Not a specific exhibition at this time, but we do offer a variety of services and special programs for our visitors with disabilities. For example, we offer touch tours. Those you have to call ahead and rearrange to visit certain artworks and exhibitions with a guide. But they'll give you gloves, and you can touch exhibitions, and that's for visitors who are visually impaired or partially sighted. We also offer visual descriptions on our audio guides, so for visitors who are blind or partially sighted, they can view the exhibitions, and there will be something describing the artwork to them in great detail so they can try to envision it. But I encourage you to visit our website.
So as you saw, we talked to that lady from the museum, and she told us about the various programs that they have. And just to reiterate, they have one for deaf individuals and blind individuals where they can come in, make an appointment, and touch the art, and that's incredible. And there's actually other organizations that try to do something similar to that, and they're called Hands On, and basically Hands On is a New York City-based organization where they try to provide accessibility and things of that kind to various disabled people in terms of like cultural events and things like that. And they actually have interpreted performances for deaf and blind people. And not only that, but they also try to educate people about being blind and deaf, and just really like open up their minds to that and like help them understand. So so like there's like various organizations, and there's also theaters that try to do that as well. The Theater for Developmental Funds Theater Access Project also tries to do sign interpreted performances. So if you're out in a day in the city like we were, instead of just being stuck on those red stairs of like, not being able to like go to the top, you can actually go to these various theaters and enjoy night out in the theater. And also they have programs for children, such as the Brooklyn Conservatory of Music. They offer specifically music for children, for disabled children. So they give you like music lessons that are very therapeutic, and they're designed for disabled children. So New York City has actually a lot of activities and tourism and all that kind of thing, accessibility for disabled individuals. And also the disability rights laws state that like any like public place, whether it's a museum or a restaurant, they have to have like elevators and things like that. So if you see one without elevators or whatever, like that's not how it's supposed to be. Like every public institute should have elevators and accessibility. And
Achilles Foundation, which we interviewed the head of, which is a foundation with people who are amputees. It's to get them running, to get them active, to give them a safe sport.
Hi, this is Dick Traum.
Hi, how are you? This is Mohammed Saeed.
Okay, good.
All right, so we're doing a project in Brooklyn College, and we want to discuss with you access and how it deals with people with disability, how it affects them.
Go ahead, give me your best question.
Yeah. So
Tell us about your marathon.
Yeah, we want to hear about you. You're the first person first amputee to run a marathon, if that's correct?
Yes, this goes back to 1976.
Wow.
Okay, I was running the New York City Marathon on an artificial leg.
And what do you think the opportunities are like for people like yourself who are amputees? And do you think that the sporting community is open? And what do you think about integration, all those things?
How did it change from 1978 till now?
There are lots of answers, but let me take one issue. Back in 1976, before I started running the marathon, the people who introduced me to a fitness program to start running did not know I was an amputee. They looked at me and I wobbled and I looked back, and they said, gee, you should get into exercise so you don't have a heart attack. And it wasn't a secret that I had an artificial leg, but it's just something that you don't talk about. For example, if you have dentures, you're not embarrassed, but you just don't talk about your dentures. So that's 1976. Now let's move 40 years later. One of our athletes, her name is Tammy Duckworth, and she lost her two legs in a helicopter crash in Iraq. And she subsequently ran for Congress and became a congresswoman, and then she recently became a U.S. Senator from Chicago. But after she was elected to Congress, there was a picture of her and other female freshmen House of Representatives in the New York Times first page. And she was standing there, and she was wearing a dress, and it was very obvious that she had two artificial legs. So what's happened is over the 40-year period where people would not really talk about it or make others aware of it, today people are proud of it. Now we have a program that's called the Freedom Team, and these are recently disabled veterans. And they come and they do the New York City Marathon, and many of them, possibly most, will walk around in short pants, and they're very, very proud of being out there and being athletes with as amputees. So there's been a major change. There's a comfort level of people with disabilities as perceived by people who are not disabled is much, much better.
That's good to hear. But on the other hand, though, there's some discussion about in the Paralympics, it's separated from the normal Olympics, and some people say that that's based on the super crip model. I don't know if you've ever heard this word used before, but a lot of people believe that disabled athletes and non-disabled athletes should be separated. What are your thoughts on that?
The whole concept of Achilles is mainstreaming. I don't have anything against the Paralympics, but my preference is to have people with disabilities running with people who are not disabled. And what this does is it increases the comfort level of people who aren't disabled, and it also makes people with disabilities feel more comfortable in society. And I think that this is possibly the most important issue concerning disabilities. In terms of super crips, that's fine, but that's like less than 0.1% of the population.
Yeah, I agree.
You said that it changed a lot in the last 40 years. Where would you like to see it headed towards the next 40 years?
To improve the integration of people with disabilities. For example, there's still some hesitancy in terms of people who are not disabled making jokes in the disabled community, and I think that we're getting closer to a situation where this is changing. For example, my sense of humor is a little bit off, but if people ask me what my disability is, I explain I'm an amputee, and sometimes they'll ask, what's the politically correct way of describing this? And with tongue-in-cheek, I tell them that I like to think of myself as being decaffeinated.
I like your humor.
Another version of this is one of our board chair. His name is David Patterson, and he used to be New York State governor. And he is visually impaired, and we talk about celebrating St. Patrick's Day together at a bar. And what we do is we try to explain to the people the difference between being visually impaired, as David is, and being visibly impaired, as some of the folks in the bar get in the afternoon.
That's a good one.
So I believe in humor as a way of reducing the social distance between people who are disabled and people who are not.
And this question doesn't have to do with access, but how do you feel about using disabled athletes, as a source of inspiration? We read about it in class. People refer to it as inspiration porn, where these athletes are just looked for, they could do it, so I could do it, so to speak. How do you feel about that?
I think it's overdone, and I think it's corny, but I've taken it.
Good question.
They are. I've taken it a step, beyond that. Like I agree with you. It's overdone, and I tend to make fun of it.
Are you like being called an inspiration?
Okay, I don't think of myself being called an inspiration. One of the things that I will do if people talk about that is I like to explain that sometimes I'm very, very tired, and I feel like I have one leg in the grave.
Oh, man.
Well, I don't know.
What's your, how do you think that people can increase the access that athletes have to the resources they need? Do you think that athletes right now have, disabled athletes have the resources that they need? And if not, how can they gain access?
I think that disabled athletes do have the equipment that's necessary, and I think it's more a process of encouraging people with disabilities just to get involved in sports. I think it's just doing. We did the New York City Marathon a few weeks ago. We had about 275 athletes from Achilles competing. And that's sort of like we had, aside from the New York Roadrunners Club, we had the second largest team of people with disabilities, and it's known, it's normal, and it's coming along nicely.
Well, what about people who are at an economic disadvantage? I know some of the prosthetics can be very costly. Do you think those people have the same amount of opportunities as people who are more well off?
I do. I feel I really haven't. I can't think in 35 years of someone coming in and saying, "Gee, I love to run, but my prosthetic isn't good enough." What happens is, if you are in a situation like that, you come out, you start to run, and lo and behold, someone knows someone, and we get the person an artificial leg. It's just not. It's just not a barrier.
So
people come in, the wheelchair isn't quite right, but come in there, and you're working out, and you have an old wheelchair, a bad wheelchair, and someone, including Achilles in certain cases, figures out a way to get you the proper chair. That's just not a big issue. And I think that we've been in over 70 countries, and I think that the folks, particularly in the United States, are as generous as anyone. We had a couple of people coming here this year from Venezuela. There were two females who were paraplegics, and they were in wheelchairs that really weren't as good as some of the ones that we have here. And lo and behold, someone stepped up and said, "Look, let me buy them two national class wheelchairs," and contributed $7,000 for them.
Wow.
But this goes on a regular basis all the time. So what I'm saying is that that's not an issue. The big trick is, how do you get someone who has never done anything athletically in 25, 35 years to become involved? And they're saying, "Oh, gee, this is a special group, be embarrassed, And the whole trick there is to get someone who knows someone, So I'm sitting there, and my friend Jack is running, and I'm saying, "Holy smokes, if that fat guy can do it, so can I."
Okay, so I think that wraps up all our questions we have. We've got some really good answers from you, though, so we'd like to say thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you
much.
for taking your time out of your day. I know you're a pretty busy guy, but thank you for giving us all that. It means a lot.
Well, I pretend to be busy.
You're busy.
Okay, thank you. If you write it up, we'd love to get a copy. Here's Kat.
Okay.
Yeah, you can just send it to my email address if you want.
All right.
So it's bateman@achillesinternational.org, or you can find my name online.
Okay.
Okay.
Good?
Thank
Okay,
you.
good luck. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Have a good
Have
day.
a good day. All right, so we don't know if we could ask random disabled people if we could videotape them. So
What do you think, Shelby?
I don't know.
we're gonna do the black test. So so we're replacing the word disability or disabled with black, and we came to the conclusion that we shouldn't do it.
Yeah, because if you say, "Hey, can I interview you because you're black?"
Yeah.
It sounds a little
I
weird.
don't know.
That sounds wrong.
Sounds wrong.
But we can record him from a distance.
Can you?
Nah, I don't know.
Can you record a
From the distance.
I don't know.
That's good. That's good.
Alright, we learned something.
I feel like we-
Progression number one.
Yeah.
Lesson number one.
I gotta still want to ask you.